In this video, I'm going to show you a tombstone that we found way up on top of a hill and far back in the back of a rural cemetery. And this stone was almost completely gone. And then I'm going to show you what I found out about this person. And then I'm going to show you how I did that. I'm James from Forgotten Lines, and we're a small team who likes to look for old cemeteries or old pictures and think, I wonder who that was. Or I wonder if that person has a story that we can tell. You know, we didn't know if they had any family to remember them or even to come visit them. I wanted to see if we could find out a little bit more about this person so that we could maybe keep their memory alive for just a little bit longer. Now, with a stone in this kind of condition, would it be possible to learn a little bit more about this person? Or are the only people who remember them, are they gone too? So I'm going to show you what I was able to find. We've all seen tombstones in our lifetimes, or antique photos, or even read obituaries. Well, on a stone there are usually two dates. And between those two dates is that one little line. And that little line represents that person's entire life, whether it was 5 years or 95 years. There was a lot of memories and a lot of stories that happened in between those. And while we won't be able to learn much about those people usually, it is nice to think that possibly we can learn something about this ordinary person who lived an ordinary life, and now they're gone forever, but they have some memories that maybe we can pass on. Now, this grave we found during a visit to a very remote cemetery deep in the woods. I don't imagine very many people visit this site, so it was very quiet and very somber to look around. And this particular tombstone jumped out at us for just a few reasons. One, it was relatively large to the others around it. Number two, the coloration of the stone from the moss and growth made it just kind of pop out. Number three, the horizontal cracks and lines made it look like it could fall apart and disintegrate at any minute. But number four was the name. DAU, or daughter, Glattis May Culberson. I thought it would be quick and easy to find such an uncommon name. But no, it was not. It's uncommon because it is horribly misspelled on the stone. So we went to the library because our library happens to have a very detailed book about every cemetery in the county and the people who are buried there. But it is missing a few. Like this one. It wasn't in that book. In fact, that entire cemetery was not in that book. That was interesting. First I used Family Search and Ancestry using the name on the stone, but nothing came up. So then I Google searched the cemetery and was able to pull up the Find a Grave listing for that site. I scrolled through all of the memorial listings until I found the matching stone. Someone had already taken a picture of it. And this researcher had determined that her name was actually Glattis May Culbertson Turner. She had been married, and even found her birth and death certificates. Now this gives us something to work with. BMDCs, or birth, marriage, death census, are oftentimes the only thing you can find on an ancestor or a person you're trying to learn about. And in most cases, they give you plenty of clues to learn more about them, or at least fill in some blanks. Glattis was born in 1910 to Ernest Culbertson and Gertrude Warner. And she died in 1928 of a hemorrhaged ulcer at only 18 years old. The informant listed on her death certificate was actually her mother, Gertrude. Between those dates, there are only two census, one in 1910 and 1920, and a marriage license. In 1910, she's a baby with her mom, living in the house of Tom and Mary Ewing, who are listed as cousins, and her mom is using her maiden name. She's not using the name of Ernest Culbertson. However, in 1920, her mom vanishes from the census, but Glattis is still in Tom and Mary's house using her father's last name, and now she is listed as Boarder, even though she was only 10 years old. I couldn't find her mom or her father in the 1920 census. Back then, people would list children on the census as boarders all the time. Sometimes this was because they may have been born out of wedlock, and there was a lot more public shame around that back then. So much so that women would often claim themselves a widow to avoid rumors and issues within their own community. Because sometimes it was easier to say you were a widow than their husband was gone or there wasn't a husband at all. I don't know if that's the case with Glattis, but it certainly wouldn't have been out of the ordinary. But here, in 1927, she married William Turner, but she would die only 5 months later. Her husband William moved back home with his parents, and he would die 5 years later. So what can we say about the person behind this unique tombstone? Well, Glattis Culbertson lived a short life of only 18 years. She spent the majority of it living with the Ewings. I believe her mom was part of her life, but did not find evidence of her father being present using the usual BMDCs. She was married very briefly before a sudden health complication took her life. She never had children, and her husband would never remarry. Her foster parents afforded her a very nice tombstone in a cemetery where the rest of her family was buried. They lived about 20 more years and had several kids and grandkids. I'd like to think that the Ewings would have remembered Glattis as a sweet girl who was gone too soon and shared memories of her with their kids. So if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video.